Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, the enemies of the modern state, well, we've cataloged them at some length. Rogue networks, people who do state-sponsored false flag terrorist operations. These are essentially private networks, banker-controlled, financier-controlled networks that infest the organisms of government, right? The U.S. invisible secret government, the rogue network, the deep state, going back to that terrible 1895 when Grover Cleveland capitulated to J.P. Morgan and the London financial community. But you've also got more open forms. Here's an example. Remember, the fascist corporate state is, as Roosevelt argued persuasively, is a merger of big business, big banks, in effect, big banks merging with government in terms of a series of policies dictated by the banking side. And this is what we have, for example, coming out of Europe. This past weekend, the 17th and 18th of December, we had a meeting of the European Union, and they're trying to iron out their new permanent bailout fund. They want to change the Lisbon Treaty. The Lisbon Treaty is not reactionary enough anymore, not oligarchical enough, but has to be made more oligarchical, more skewed towards the needs of bankers, parasites, and looters. They don't have the details yet, but here's the idea. Washington Post article, a crisis of banks getting too big. Some liabilities are larger than the economies of their nation, by Howard Schneider. Ireland's economic collapse is rewriting the rules for how international regulators and investors evaluate the health of national economies and banking systems, while raising the risk that Europe's troubles may run deeper and last longer than expected. And now here's the point. Behind that shift is a growing recognition that the obligations of a country's major banks have become, in effect, obligations of the country itself, particularly in Europe, where nations commonly have banking systems in which a few internationally connected companies have liabilities far exceeding their host nations' economies, meaning derivatives, of course. But the idea is, guess what? There's been a backdoor merger between the modern state and the banking power, the money power, the malefactors of great wealth, the economic royalists, and guess what? All those derivatives are now going to crush the lives of individuals. This gets you back, quite literally, to the role of the Venetian, Genoese, and Florentine bankers in the 1320s, 1330s, the collapsing world of the late Middle Ages, which Dante saw and was trying to point a way out of. And that, of course, leads to what? To the Black Death. It leads to the extermination of 1/3 to 1/2 of the population of Europe. The tab for failed banks and bad loans, in the case of Ireland, became so steep that the country had to turn to the International Monetary Fund and the European Union. Ireland became a prime example of a new phenomenon, writes the Washington Post. Banking systems that are on a national level too big to save. And we get some experts from the Institute of International Finance at the IMF. We've had banking crises, and now we've had sovereign debt crises, and now we have a fusion of the two. Well, the point of that is no. And as John Galeazzo Visconti would have said, no, we're going to write off that debt. We're going to cancel it. We're going to abrogate it. We're going to shred it. We're going to push the delete button on those derivatives. Now, we've also got other ways of attacking the modern state. Here we are in Charleston, South Carolina, the cradle of secessionism. Washington Post, Tuesday, December 21st. The memories of the Civil War collided with modern-day civil rights Monday as protesters targeted a secession ball commemorating South Carolina's decision exactly 150 years ago to secede from the United States. Now, of course, it's not just civil rights. It's a little matter of treason and chaos and anarchy. I wonder if General Sherman was invited or somebody showed up dressed as General Sherman who to give this ball the proper conclusion, because, of course, as a result of the intemperate and treasonous actions of these characters in South Carolina, they found themselves in dire straits not too many years later. So that's another way to do it, and that's the kind of stuff we're going to be seeing from these many Tea Party fanatics. So you get the idea. And, of course, at the center of it, we have Obama. None of this would be possible without Obama. Obama is now in a fool's paradise. He's put his plutocrat-friendly tax bill through, and as a result of this, there's a kind of afterglow of positive publicity coming to him from the mass media. The tax cuts for the super rich were most welcome. The bonanza in the form of the estate tax, the speculative parasites who ripped off the American people in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s are going to get to keep it, or at least keep a lot of it, the last chance to claw back some of those ill-gotten rip-off profits, unfortunately goes a-glimmering. And worst of all, it's the worst is not what they give to the super rich, that's standard, but now to begin to attack Social Security. This stealth attack, this treacherous stealth attack on Social Security by means of this demagogic and odious 2% cut in the payroll tax. This will then be the attempted method of the reactionaries to bring down Social Security, now arguing more persuasively that it's not going to be solvent. Well, if you keep ripping off, looting the tax income, then maybe you get your wish. Time to fight back on all of these things. The reactionaries are at the gates, the barbarians are at the gates, the myrmidons of finance capital are going to be piling into Washington. They're going to go for a default by the United States. That's to express their hatred of the Constitution. There's that power of Congress to borrow money at the credit of the United States. These fanatics don't like that. They're not conservatives. They're reactionaries. Expose them, fight them, and disperse them. Of course, you got to fight on two fronts, because without Obama and the Wall Street Democrats, these people could never occur. Notice the role of the Koch brothers, the cokeheads, in this entire thing. We're also told now that Palin has one of her key advisors, Randy Scheunemann of the Orion Group, is also coming to her from the Soros congeries of think tanks and others. So the complete dishonesty, the complete astroturfing, fictitious nature of this Tea Party opposition should be more and more clear. Now, the Zadroga bill finally passed. At least it's passed the Senate, and I believe the House too. This is the 9/11 first responders, and it was an attempt to fund medical care for the police, the firemen, and I believe also the volunteers and other crisis workers who cleaned up the site there in Lower Manhattan. This is an example of how you could have been winning victories for the past 2 years if you'd had a real president, which, of course, you didn't have. In this case, it was Jon Stewart of The Daily Show, not Obama, not Barkey, who never lifts a finger for anybody except himself, or to rip off the American people and to get kudos from Wall Street and their controlled Wall Street media. This is Jon Stewart, who does a special program about how the reactionary Republicans, the heartless thugs, DeMint and Coburn, are blocking help for the 9/11 first responders. And that's what broke the ice. That's what Obama could have been doing the whole time in a series of set pieces. He didn't do it. We'll be back with World Crisis Radio.